My own sense of the context change in the past 12 months to do with the state of the economy, I think you're quite correct, that from the beginning, before the shot was fired in this campaign, the public mood as measured in opinion polls going back to December of last year appeared to have shifted a gear. I would say myself, although I've heard it widely used that this was fear, I would say a different thing. I think that the perspective that people opted for was realism, a sense that we are in tough circumstances, that we can't afford the luxury, as perhaps some may have used the last time, to hit the government or whatever. And instead people realistically stood back and separated the wood from the trees and took the long view for Ireland and came out in enormous numbers to vote overwhelmingly to stay engaged.
OK, I want to move on to other issues, not least the Commissioner topic. But Brian Hickey, spokesperson for CORE, how do you feel now about a very overwhelming rejection of your No campaign and the other people involved in the No campaign?
Well, obviously disappointed and very surprised as well. I mean, the result certainly didn't tally with what we were experiencing either on doorsteps or on the street. When I've been canvassing over the past few weeks, and on only one occasion did the majority of people on the doorstep who told me how they were intending to vote say they were voting yes. On every other night I was out, I didn't ask everyone how they were voting, but those who volunteered the information, the people who told me how they were going to vote, said they were going to vote no. So I'm really quite staggered at the result. I certainly wasn't.
That's interesting. Do you think that they were saying to you, because you were on their doorstep, they were going to vote no, when in fact they knew they were going to vote yes?
No, I don't think so. It was fairly clear. I think it's fairly clear from the demeanour of someone on the doorstep when he wants to get rid of you or when he's giving you his honest opinion. And I certainly had a lot. Generally speaking, people simply took a leaflet and closed the door. But when someone said, I'm voting this way or I'm voting that way, most of the time they said they were voting no.
But do you think that as a campaign organisation, you did yourselves untold damage by some of the misleading information on your posters, not least the 184, the raising of the question that perhaps that might be our minimum wage if we accepted the Lisbon Treaty?
Well, there wasn't misinformation on our posters. We were trying to raise awareness in people's minds. The thing that the 184 that you talk about, what we were trying to highlight was the fact that we could see a situation where people would be working in Ireland for less than the present minimum wage, and that could drive the de facto, not the statutory, minimum wage down. Now, that could be misunderstood by people, and it was easy, of course, for the yes side to simply say, oh no, there's no question of Lisbon changing the minimum wage. But I mean, I certainly don't apologise for any of those posters. We were trying to raise very, very serious questions with the voters, and not just kind of try to offer them bland platitudes like "let's stay in Europe."
Joan Burton, your own views before we go on to some of the other issues.
Well, I think people thought very long and hard about this, and I had an opportunity to have quite a good number of detailed conversations with people. What struck me in my own constituency, particularly in Dublin West, was that women were less strong in favour of Europe at the beginning of the campaign. By the end of the campaign, older women in particular were saying, look, we know young people who are graduates and so on, who are unemployed. Isn't Europe the best thing to do? And for instance, contrary to what was said yesterday about a lot of working class areas voting resolutely no, that's not true.
Yeah.
Because in my constituency, there have been about 15,000 homes built in the last 10 years. And among men, say for instance in their early 30s, married with 2 children, a mortgage, possibly negative equity. On one of the samples that I did, there was a 70% yes vote in places like Tyrrellstown, in Little Pace, in Diswellstown. I mean, the fact was that practically every part of society where people felt they had a stake for themselves or for their children or for their grandchildren felt, I think, impelled to say, if we vote no, we send a signal that we are rupturing in some fundamental way the connection with the European Union. And I actually think that the European Union should pay close attention attention to the vote in Ireland, because people came out in their droves to vote. They voted consciously to maintain the connection with the European Union, despite, being horrifically critical of Brian Cowan, the government,
Yes.
Roddy Malloy, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
They did put that to one side. And in terms of the European Union, where it is very difficult for people to feel close to what is quite a kind of structured bureaucracy, people said, look, on balance, this is the best decision for us. And they voted yes. And I mean, the level of voting was extraordinarily high in a huge number of
Yes,
areas.
yeah.
Where people voted no, either they were people who had specific issues with specific things, like, for instance, people in the fishing community. A lot of them, I think, were adamant no voters.
They
were
would have been up in
certainly when I was-
Donegal as well, yes.
But also, you had some communities where certainly people did feel left behind. But the amazing thing I found on, Wednesday and Thursday, on the last days of the canvass, women who were saying to me they'd voted no the last time, were saying, Joan, I do agree with you that Europe has been terribly good for women. It's been very good, for instance, for a thing that people don't talk about much, the rights of access where people have a disability. That was a concept that wasn't really entertained very much in this country until we became members of the European Union. So all those factors, by the time people got to the ballot box, had come together to give what I think was a very good decision by Ireland. And by the way, people who say that voting no would have no economic consequences are so wrong.
Okay.
To start with, our interest rates would have gone up on a national debt, not to mention NAMA, which is expanding dramatically. And secondly, for American and other multinationals thinking of locating in Ireland, not being a core member of the European Union would have been a factor to not select Ireland.
Okay, we are also joined on the line by Nigel Farage, the founder member of the UK Independence Party. He's also a member of the European Parliament. Good morning to you, Nigel.
Good morning, good morning.
Now, I met you yesterday at Dublin Castle, but you're back over in the UK at this stage now. Tell me what your own views are about the Irish vote yesterday.
Yeah, I think on reflection, the Irish people didn't vote so much on this constitutional treaty. They effectively voted on whether they were going to stay part of the European Union. I noticed that there really wasn't much debate about the treaty. We tried, in the leaflet we put out, to quote articles from the treaty and to try and have a debate about what those clauses meant. But that wasn't the way the game was played. It was a vote for, listen, if you vote no, you'll be cast out. We're in dire economic circumstances as it is, and people voted not to take a risk. So, I can understand people are very frightened, and certainly when people like Mr. Barroso turn up, the Commission President, and say, if you vote no, there'll be dire consequences, I think people were frightened. But, my view is that, effectively, you've said yes to a constitution that has a bigger, higher authority than your own constitution. And I guess that may take some time to sink in.
Can I just say, Nigel, this is Joan Burton speaking here in Dublin. I actually think your intervention helped people to decide yes, because people in Ireland just don't like Little Englander politics coming to Ireland so long after we became independent of the United Kingdom. And secondly, can I say yesterday, I think you should withdraw the rather disparaging comments attributed to you on various websites about the quality of the Irish vote. Irish people came out and voted freely, and there was as close to an almost full vote by Irish people, both people who wanted to vote no and people who wanted to vote yes. And, you've no right to compare our democracy, as was suggested yesterday by you, as in some way being like Zimbabwe or Afghanistan. That's a disgraceful comment to make. And I actually think, and I'm glad in a way, that for many people you actually brought it down to the net point. Do we want to go back into Little England, small island politics, or do we want to be part of something better and brighter, even in very difficult times?